Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu v'tzivanu la'aseh v'divrei Torah. Amen. Oh, and Marilyn, I'm happy to see you here. I know you had surgery, and I hope everything went well and you're feeling okay. You're welcome. And I'll see you. We'll talk more at the tea, because I'm going to sit with you and I want to hear all the details. So, and by the way, as I said, there's a sisterhood tea if you want to sign up. It's April 30th. And you've been getting emails. Okay, so we're talking about one of the women prophets who is also a judge. She's a judge and a prophet, which is very, very rare. And it's Deborah. And Deborah also, I believe, is one of the reasons, because of Deborah, that the Reform and conservative movements, and so now kind of like the Orthodox, though they don't call it a rabbi, began to accept women rabbis because of Deborah, because she's in the Torah and she performed everything that a man did. She was also a leader in battle. So we're going to look at her, and if we don't finish this time, we'll go to next time, because there's a second woman in the story, Yael, who's also a very interesting woman. So this whole section is about two powerful women. And interestingly, this is the Haftorah corresponding to the crossing of the Red Sea and the song at the sea, of the sea, the Shirat Hayam, where Miriam sings and recites poetry. The unique thing about this chapter, it's Judges 5 and 6 in the book of Judges, which is in the Bible. There's at the end of the Torah, then the first book is Joshua, and the next section is called Judges. And it's about a series. There was no king or no real leaders. There were these judges who arose as the need occurred. But Deborah, the chapter 5, is the story in a narrative, and chapter 6 is a poem, an epic poem that Deborah wrote with Barak, who was the military commander that she she went with him to fight in the battle. So I sent this to you, but we're going to look at it, but I'm going to do it in a different order. I think we should read the text first, and then we'll look at the commentary, even though that's not how I sent it to you, but I've rethought that. So, it's chapter 4 and 5, not 5 and 6. Sorry. And let me make this bigger. And there's a lot of interesting, hold on. Yeah, it's not very long, but it's very evocative. And I want to point out again that, hold on. Well, this makes it bigger. That starting with, really after the Torah, the writing, even though they say it's the same writer for the last book, the book of Deuteronomy, it's a little different, but the writing is so fantastic. It's really like a novel, like an epic poem, like a story. The writing has dialogue, description, feelings, inner thoughts, which is not common in the Torah. It's a completely different kind of writing. It doesn't mean it wasn't historical, but the person who wrote it, the people who wrote these, they don't know if it was a school or, an individual, there's debates, had an incredible style and insight into human nature and was a very talented storyteller. So, I point this out a lot, but it's really fun to read. The Torah is a little dry, actually, as compared to this. So it starts with, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, meaning that every time they were in trouble, some kind of leader arose. And Ehud was the one, he died. So now bad things are happening and they need, again, someone to save them, help them, lead them. So who wants to start reading? Who would like to read? Okay. Okay, who just raised your hand, because I just lost you?
Two of us.
Okay, wait.
Leslie.
Oh, is it Leslie?
I can read, but I might need help with some of the names.
I can't see the name. I can't see everybody. Speak up. Who is it?
I would. Leslie would.
Leslie, and then Stacy also.
Oh, Stacy. Okay, Stacy. Let's start with.
You want me to go first? Okay. Okay. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagoyim. Is that right? Okay. Because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried to the Lord for help.
Okay, so already we get a sense of a huge army, 900 chariots fitted with iron spikes, sticking out. If you saw Spartacus or any of those, or Ben-Hur, these chariots, but with iron, and so they had a very powerful army. Okay, now here comes our heroine. Okay, go ahead. A little more, Stacy.
Okay,
now Deborah.
Okay, our pictures are cutting off the right side
all right.
of the page.
How's that?
Okay, now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at the time.
Okay, I want to stop. In Hebrew, and maybe Penina knows this, it says, Devorah Isha Nivia Eshet Lapidot. Devorah, a woman prophet. In Hebrew, it says Isha. Isha means woman. Nivia is a prophet. Eshet Lapidot. Now in Hebrew, Eshet could mean wife of or woman of. It's not clear. So it could be wife of Lapidot, which Lapidot, it's really, I don't know why they put H's in there, which means like lanterns, right? Okay. So it says the wife of Lapidot, or a woman of lanterns or of light. So it could be a woman of, because lanterns were with fire, it could be a woman of fire. Devorah, a woman prophet, a woman of fire, a fiery woman. Or is she just a wife of Lapidot? Or you'll see later the rabbis, I don't know, they say, oh, she went and trimmed the wicks of the lanterns in the sanctuary. There was no temple, but in the sanctuary. So I don't think so. I think she was because there's no other mention of her husband. There's no other mention of anything. She was a woman prophet, a woman of fire, was leading Israel at the time. Okay.
So what does it mean that she was leading Israel at the time? Is it militarily she was leading Israel? Was she the mayor, whatever?
Okay, so here, because this is such a good writer, why don't you read, Leslie, what that meant? Go ahead.
Okay. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided.
So she sat under a tree because they said she did it outside, so it was in the open, so there would be no secrecy, no bribery, no anything. And she was a judge. She handled disputes. Now, the other person we hear who did that was Moses. Moses was handling disputes with everyone. And then his father-in-law came up to him and said, it's too many people, because he was doing all the Israelites, not just her area or her tribe, and told him to delegate. And that's when judges were appointed. So she was a Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
a hero, yeah,
and also a prophet. So she not only knew the law, but she had vision. She had prophecy. She had foresight. Now, we could say a prophet is a person who's like, I don't know, you could say it's not like a psychic. I would say it's more like someone who has vision and foresees things, or they also believed had messages from God. So we see that she was a judge, and like the judge of the whole Ephraim. And people went to her, men and women, not just women. And then continue. This is her prophecy part. Go ahead.
She sent for Barak, son of Abinam from Kadesh, in Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun.
Okay, so Naphtali, Zebulun, and she's in Ephraim. These are all tribes, different tribes that were in the land of Canaan. Think of it like the 13 colonies in early America. These were like the 12 tribes of Israel, of ancient Israel, which was Canaan at that time still. They were these different tribes, and they were all trying to fight the Canaanites and Sisera and the king Yavin. So she said, go and take men from, he was from Naphtali. She said, go get men from Naphtali and Zebulun. It's like saying, go get people from like Massachusetts and New York and lead them. Continue.
And lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands.
Okay, one more sentence.
Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go.
Okay, so what does that tell us about Deborah and Barak? I don't, so the rabbis, of course, because God forbid she should be unmarried. Barak means lightning. So they try to say, well, Lapidot and Barak are the same guy. That, you know, Barak, and they have this, but it's not. It's two different people with two completely different names. And Barak, as you know, is still a pretty popular name in Israel. And Barack Obama, hello, there you get it. But Lapidot is not. I don't know.
So he's lightning and she's fire.
Exactly. That's it. So there's symbolism there. He's like, but what does he say? She tells this guy he's like a commander. Okay, Pnina.
There is a member in the Knesset of Israel by the name of Lapid. His last name is Lapid.
That's true. That's true.
It's a used name.
Last name though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's his last name.
I mean, it's a name that's still around. It's
right.
not like something that showed up one time. Yeah.
Okay. So what does this say about Deborah? Let's just summarize her character. Who is she? Who is she? What do you get from this first part of the text?
She seems powerful.
It's extremely powerful.
Okay. What else?
And seems to be very fair, that she can be relied upon to settle disputes.
Okay.
And very highly respected.
Okay. Yes, Pnina.
Extremely smart, because she figured out that the chariots, or Barak with her, that the chariots cannot go onto the mountain, and the mountain of Tabor is a very significant point in geography that was it gave advancement to the Israeli army.
So she was a military
fighting from the hills, this is the one thing that they knew, that the chariots, anything that has to do with iron and weight, couldn't go up the hills. So that's where they attacked from the hills.
She was a military strategist.
There we go.
Okay, what else? Leslie?
She's also committed to her people.
Okay, what else about her?
She was very trusted.
She was very trusted. Okay, she was wise, she was trusted, she was learned.
She was revered.
She had to know the law. She was like, went to law school, basically, because she was a judge, she was the highest in the land. Okay, and why do you think Barak said to her, and she was a seer, but why do you think Barak, listen to what it says, I won't go unless you go with me. Why? Why do you think he would say that? Why would a man in general say that to a woman? What kind of woman would that have to be?
Well, she's a prophet and she was smarter than him.
Okay. But she
She's
must
a
have
warrior.
I think I've shared that one of my hobbies is the Tudors and the Elizabethan age. So Queen Elizabeth, I think about Deborah and Queen Elizabeth, when they were fighting the Spanish Armada, she went to the troops. She actually wore like a breastplate or whatever, like a protection. And she was going to lead the troops. And she rallied the troops because she was so charismatic. So her personality, her speaking style, and she even said, I may have the body of the woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and that's what she said. And they won. Well, they kind of won really because there was, it was weather. They really won because of weather. And all of the gusts of wind and the big armada ships ended up sinking and whatever. But anyway, there had to be something about her personality that Barak felt, if you show up, people are going to rally. If I come, because they've been fighting for 20 years. So obviously he'd probably rallied troops before, but there was something about Deborah, her whole persona. I mean, I don't even know if we can think of a woman today. Maybe Catherine the Great was like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of or Queen Elizabeth. But in our day, are there any woman that is a military leader, a military strategist, a prophet? So she's a religious leader, a judge, a legal leader, a government leader.
About Golda Meir.
What? Golda Meir.
Golda Meir. Yeah.
He was head of the country when Egypt attacked.
That's right. So Golda Meir, exactly. But she wasn't a judge too. She wasn't on the court.
A military leader.
I mean, yeah. So this Deborah is really unique in the Bible, not the Torah, the whole Bible, as a very unique woman. And we need to know about her. What did I do?
He was also popular.
She was very popular. Hold on, I didn't.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes. Well, but wait a minute.
But she wasn't, yeah.
No,
she wasn't military.
Okay, all right.
No, she wasn't military, but she was
It wasn't.
revered.
Who wouldn't follow her anywhere?
Yeah, we all would.
Exactly. Rabbi.
So he said, okay, so now Deborah, because this is such a great story. Okay, who would like to read? Risa, why don't you read? Certainly I will go with you.
Certainly I will go with you, said Deborah. But because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So Deborah went with.
He says, all right, I'll go with you, but if I go with you, God's going to deliver it. But we find out it's not her. We find that out. Okay, keep going.
So Deborah went with Barak to Kedesh. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went up with him. Now, Heber the Canaanite and had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zaananim near Kedesh.
Okay, so now there was, and this tells us that there were other nationalities and peoples and ethnic groups in the land. So Heber, the Canaanite, that was not a Canaanite, but a Kenite. And he lived near Kadesh. So he lived near Kadesh. And why do we want to know this? You'll find out. Okay, so keep going. One more.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law.
Yeah, they
would be Miriam's husband, but she was, other places say, married to Adinabab. And
she was married to what's his name?
Hobab was another name for Yitro, I thought. They once referred to his father-in-law.
Well, so it's, who knows? They changed their names. This was written, hundreds of years later. Hobab, was it his brother-in-law? I mean, they also said she was married to, who's the other guy that came back with Joshua? And Caleb, they say she was married to. So that's interesting that they say Moses' brother-in-law.
Yes, and that would only be Miriam's husband.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's a good question. I'll look it up and I'll find out. I'll research that. Okay. Who's reading?
I was reading.
Okay.
When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Haroset Hagoyim to the Kishon River all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron.
Okay, so, but this little Chiv Chever, the Canaanite, is like a little aside. It's in storytelling, you'd say, why is it there? Well, keep this in mind. We're setting up something that's going to pay off later. So I love the way the storyteller slips that in and you go, okay, that's nice, but we find out more later. Okay, so who would like to continue? Merle.
Are we, when they told,
Yeah, when then Deborah said to
wait a minute, where are we?
14.
Deborah said to Barak, go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advice, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword, and Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot.
So I think, as Penina said, they were coming down and the chariots were having a hard time coming up, and they, attacked. They advanced and they were waiting for them, and they attacked and they won. Again, Deborah is the one rallying the troops, saying, don't be afraid. I know for 20 years you haven't been able to conquer them, but God is with you now. Go, men, go. And she led them into battle. She literally fought, but she sent them into battle, and she had to give Barak his directions. Like you think of generals or colonels saying, okay, advance, attack, wait till I say go. This is Deborah. So she's the military leader in this battle. So she's a pretty impressive woman. Okay, so let's keep going, Merle. Barak pursued the chariots.
Chariots and army as far as Haroseth Hagoyim, and all Sisera's troops fell by the sword. Not a man was left. Sisera, meanwhile, fled on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was an alliance between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the family of Heber and Kenite. Okay,
so what does that mean? The general, which I think is interesting too, because if you think of like battles, the general doesn't run, he ran away, and he ran now to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite that we mentioned, who was nearby, because there was an alliance between Yavin, the king, and the family of Heber the Kenite. However, the big question is, and I don't know if anyone knows this, was Yael an Israelite? Was she Jewish? I mean, it wasn't Jewish then, it was Israelite. I always thought she wasn't, but then I looked at some commentary which asked the question, was she an Israelite married to a Canaanite? Or was, because otherwise, why does she do what she does? Does anyone have any thoughts on
Kenites Israelis?
What?
Are the Kenites Israelis?
No. I mean, they're not of the Israelite religion. They're Canaanites. It's another ethnic group that live there. There were a lot of Philistines live, all kinds, different people lived around. Right. So the question is, was she a Canaanite or was she an Israelite? Because why did she do this? We have to wonder, and you're going to see what she does in a minute. Or would any decent person do what she did, or decent, brave person do what she did? Okay, so let's see what she did. Some of you may know, some of you may not know what she did, and it's very interesting. Okay, so Cindy, why don't you read? You're muted. Okay.
Yeah. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." So he entered her tent and she covered him with a blanket. "I'm thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. Stand in the doorway of the tent, he told her. If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone in there, say no. But Yael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through the temple into the ground and he died.
Whoa.
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 Wow.
He took the tent and put it through his.
Yikes.
Okay, so
That's
let's
one
just-
strong woman.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dr. Google says that she was an Israelite sympathizer.
Oh, an Israelite sympathizer.
So he would think that she would not kill him.
Wow.
Right. Okay. Right. So he would.
Was there some jealousy there?
Her husband
Whoa.
was friendly with the king, Sisera's king.
Right.
So first of all, he heads toward her and she's outside waiting for him. I mean, she's outside. She says, come in, come in. So do you think she had this plot from the beginning?
Yeah.
She drugged him.
It's
Okay, right.
premeditated.
He says, give me water, and she gives him milk. Why milk?
There
was something in
Easily
the
drugged.
I mean, it's calming. Milk you're supposed to take if you have insomnia. It's calming.
It
makes you sleepy.
It makes you sleepy. So she said, oh, and she covered him with a blanket. There's a commentary, if we get to it, about how it was like she was a mother to a little boy. Come in, I'll give you your blankie, I'll give you a little warm milk. You know, you're fine, don't worry. And then whammo. Kills.
She must have been a friend of Judith.
Exactly. Now, what did Judith do, Risa?
She killed the king,
She killed the general,
the general. She killed the general.
She cut his head off.
Yes,
His own
slightly.
sword. Again, she got him drunk. He was these men are horrible men. Think of them like, you know, Putin's army or something like that. Horrible thing. And the head of Putin's army comes to you and he's killing people for 20 years. They've been under the boot of Putin's army, and the general comes to your house and you know he's doing it.
I will kill him.
Okay, exactly.
Judith also fed him cheese. She had a handmaiden with her.
Judith fed him cheese, which is also, but that was to make him thirsty. So he would drink a lot of wine.
Yes, and then this one.
And then she killed him.
Plotted this beforehand. First, she comes later, so it's probably modeled on this somewhat.
Well, Judith is later than this.
That's what I
Yes,
said.
that's
It's
what she said.
modeled
Judith.
on this.
We're going to read Judith before we finish the class. We'll read about Judith.
Yeah,
If he's drinking wine and she gives him a lot of wine, then he won't.
This is Judith, not
Well,
yeah.
I'm saying, but if Judith gives him all this wine, he's not going to be very functional,
Exactly.
Right.
That's when
which I think is the purpose.
exactly. But the milk, she gives him milk, warm milk. And
Well, that'll put him to sleep.
he fell asleep and she killed him. So this is Deborah's prophecy. He will, he will be defeated by the hands of a woman. It's Yael. So we have, and Yael is a very popular name in Israel to this day. And, Yael is considered a great heroine and very brave. So it's interesting that in both this whole story, it's about the heroism of women. Okay, so let's just, and then Barak is always like a day too late. Okay, so then who's reading? Cindy, just finish it up. Just then Barak came.
Just then Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Yael went out to meet him. Come, she said to him, I will show you the man you're looking for. So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with a tent peg through his temple, dead.
Okay, last sentence.
On that day, God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him.
Okay, so we see again, Barak comes too late. Yael, and the dialogue, there's dialogue. It's so fantastic. There's actually conversation, and he said this and she said that, which we haven't seen in the Torah, except that, and the Lord said to God, Moses, speak. Or there was a little bit, there is here and there. There is some in the Genesis, but certainly not to the degree and the detail of here. So now we go back and we look at some of the commentary on Deborah. And we don't need to, okay. So Deborah is one of the major judges, meaning charismatic military leaders rather than judicial, but she was both. In the book of Judges story of how Israel takes the land of Canaan, the only female judge, the only one to be called a prophet and a judge, the only one described as performing a judicial function. Deborah is a decisive figure in the defeat of the Canaanites. So, and this took place around 1100 BCE. So it was quite old. If you look at here, it says, as the story opens, Deborah is already a judge settling disputes. She is identified as Ashes Lapidot, which I told you, which may mean woman of the town. Oh, it could be the town of Lapidot, woman of the man Lapidot, or woman of torches. That is a fiery woman, or even pyromancer, which is kind of, I guess, a prophet. If Lapidot is a person, he is otherwise an unknown figure in the Hebrew Bible. So some Jewish traditions posit that Lapidot is another name for Deborah's general Barak, which means lightning, but we don't think that. So this is basically, yeah. And it says, even though we don't see her wielding weapons, she was a military leader. Okay, so then they just review, but I wanted to read this part. This we're going to see in the poem in a minute, but let's read right here. Penina, why don't you read here? Deborah calls herself a mother in Israel.
Okay, you want me to read?
Yeah.
Okay, Deborah is called or calls herself a mother of Israel in Israel, according to Judges. Okay. Perhaps the character is meant to be a biological mother, but no children are mentioned in the text. More likely, the phrase indicates that her arbitration powers as judge were parental, even maternal, though hardly in a tender, nurturing sense. Mother, like father, can be an honorific? What kind of a word?
Yeah, it's like saying general or master.
Or honor. Okay, I got it. Okay. Honorific title for an authority figure or protector in the community.
Okay.
Okay, we can also read Deborah is proclaimed status as a mother as a way of blunting. What does this mean? What is blunting?
Making not so hard.
Okay, blunting the sharp of her transgressive, violent character.
Okay, so this commentary says, she's violent, she's very masculine in her leadership, in her, smite them, fight, whatever. And so they're saying that they're trying to soften her by calling her a mother of Israel. And Deborah is described with motherhood language despite the lack of children. So she's called herself the mother of Israel. And then we see Yael acting as a mother also when she tricked and killed Sisera. So now I want to look at Yael.
Yeah, but before we go to Yael, I want to say something really quick. Deborah remained kind of like a symbol also for the strategy. There was a rifle that was invented about 9 years ago in Israel that was called Tavor. That was the name of the mountain.
Right.
That they went up there to fight from. So I think the strategy of what she did was something very smart that they saw at the time. They realized that this was a good strategy to do and fight from the hills, from the mountains, which they tried to do with the rest later on when the Romans did, but it didn't work with them. Anyhow, because some of them came with elephants, like the Greeks and stuff like that. So but in that particular case, because of the chariots, it was a very strategic, smart move to do. And besides, if you're looking at the Israeli army employing women soldiers, I think we were kind of like first, or maybe
The
that
first
actually
army with women.
absolutely that
Yes.
combat army. I'm not
Right.
talking just like being the drivers of Eisenhower and stuff like that. I'm talking like fighting. So I think she's a very symbol of strategic, being clever in strategy, and of course courage, and also leading the way for women into the Israeli army.
Now, besides all of these other talents, she also was a songstress
Right,
and a poet.
right.
So she did both. So, and in her poetry, and we're going to look at it in a second, we're not going to read all of it, we're going to look at some of it. She evokes another woman, which is Sisera's mother. And she talks about Sisera's mother and how she portrays her as and we look at like the view of the enemy's mother, not sympathetically. She's not a soft and fuzzy kind of woman. She's a tough woman, smart woman, and very ethical. I feel like she's very ethical, and she has a very, very strong sense of right and wrong and whatever. And she's very inspirational. So let's now look at the poem, because the poem is amazing. And it's all part of this, and this all part of it. So the Yael part we kind of discussed already, and you can read it. But okay, so here, just this last thing. It says here, evaluation of Yael's actions. Yael fulfills Deborah's prophecy, but she confounds other expectations. The reader or the listener of the tale, seeing a general at war come into a woman's tent, fears for the woman, not for the man. So in a typical story, a man comes into a woman's tent because it's her tent, meaning, men and women had their own places where they lived and slept. Women had their own tent. Yet when the outside world of national battles comes into her domestic space, Yael takes up a domestic weapon of opportunity and becomes a heroine. Her actions are not explained. She is the wife of a Canaanite, but is she herself Canaanite or Israelite? If Canaanite, does she act like Rachav, who we studied last week, another non-Israelite out of loyalty to God and Israel? Or does she react to the general's imperious behavior? So in other words, because he was so bossy and horrible, she said, I'm killing him. When
I like the fact that women has a role. Maybe she was inspired by Dvorah. I think that was the thing.
Exactly, because she lived under Dvorah's, jurisdiction or government. When Yael's hospitality induces him to feel secure, he issues commands to her. Did this make Yael wonder what would happen to her when he awoke? Whatever her motives, the story considers her action the will of God. At the same time, it conveys the notion that being killed by a woman shames both the dead general and the live Israelite general who had not slain him himself. So Barak is embarrassed. He didn't kill him, and she killed the guy. So it's a pretty powerful woman. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This is very interesting. Where is this commentary from?
Where did I find this?
Well, I'll tell you why I find it interesting. When they were talking about Deborah, they referred to her, blunting her, violent, whatever nature. And here they talk about Yael as, her killing, shaming both, the dead and alive general. And I find interesting that whoever wrote this, thousands of years ago, chose to have two women carry out the will of God, if you will. But then in the commentary, this choice, it's sort of explained. No, it's justified
and examines it deeper.
Yeah, on the basis that they're women.
The basis that they're women and they defy expectations of women. They break the mold. They break the stereotype of women. They take action on their own. They use their, Yael uses her femininity to entice Sisera into the tent so he would feel safe, and then kills him. So there's like the disguise of that, which is what Judith did also. But Deborah, she's so recognized for her power that the general of the army won't go to war without her. So we have two very, two possible role models for us to be. I mean, you could use your femininity as a weapon or as whatever you want to shield, or you can just say, I'm not that. I'm beyond that. I'm a human, I'm a woman, but I'm as good as any man, if not better, because she's also this amazing poet. Yes, Stacy.
Well, what this brings to mind to me is that she was obviously very confident, a really confident person.
Who, which one?
We're talking Deborah.
Deborah, yes.
I mean, not just a confident woman, but a confident person, so.
So I have no idea, there's no answer to this, but how old do you think Deborah is in this story? And how old do you think Yael is? Let's just speculate. What do you think?
30s?
For who?
I don't know.
Deborah would have to be in her 30s because she has to have some amount of experience doing all this stuff, yet be young enough to be able to go into battle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she just led, she didn't fight.
But she still had to physically walk up the hill and the whole,
Well, because Queen Elizabeth was in her 50s.
She still has that
It's a long time ago, though.
capability of leadership. So I'm thinking 30s, 40s.
I think 30s, somewhere in the 30s, yeah, for Deborah.
For the most part, they didn't live all that long.
That's what I was going to say. What was the life expectancy?
Well, it depends. Maybe, Moses lived to be 120. No.
Oh, right.
No, but I mean other people.
I feel, that's interesting. Okay. Any other opinions? I feel like she couldn't have that wisdom and that experience at 30s. I think 30s, you're just starting. I look at rabbis in their 30s even, or leaders in their 30s. There are very few that have also that would command the respect of older people, of older fighters and soldiers and whatever. And if they've been fighting for 20 years,
True.
She'd have to be at least 45. I think she's in her 50s, personally.
Plus, here to support that, they don't even discuss the fact that she could have a child. She doesn't have any, but they don't talk about, well, if she marries, pick a name, she could have a child next year. It's sort of, it's over.
It's not her path.
I don't know if she's married, though.
We don't know if she's married or her children are grown, but there's no mention. She's certainly not defined by her marital status or, her motherhood status. Nina.
Look at the name, Dvorah, a bee. She's quick and she stings right away. You always have to look at the names in Hebrew, what they mean.
Okay, so Devorah means bee, like a bumblebee.
Quick and effective, boom, boom.
And Fanina makes honey.
Absolutely.
And makes honey.
Yes.
So
Right.
she's quick and piercing, but she's sweet. She creates sweetness.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of meaning to that name.
And Yael is a female deer. Yael is a female
So I
deer.
feel Yael was younger.
Yeah, and very feminine, very soft to look at, but then she could.
But
she
she's
could
strong. If we need strength, a tent pin and a mallet
quick, Yael.
are not that light. Take that and you have to be strong to lift it and throw it down. So I feel like she would be in her late 20s or 30s or something like that. I feel her physical strength, but that's my feeling, but it's based on nothing.
How old was Golda Meir? Look how powerful she was. Was she in her 50s?
At least.
So Devorah would be in her late
Judge for 40 years. So
wait, just a second, Merle. Let Doris finish. Go ahead, Doris.
I was thinking, Golda Meir was no spring chicken, and she was ruling the world over there. And so I would say Devorah could have been in her early 50s, perhaps.
And Indira Gandhi was also when she was the Prime Minister of India, if we remember her. Merle.
well, all Google says is that she was a judge for 40 years.
40 years.
Doesn't say exactly how old she was or when she passed away. But to be a judge for 40 years, you had to start. I can't imagine anybody starting in their 30s. So I'm gonna say
She could have lived to her 70s. Should have been 30, 70 or 75 or 80, we don't know. But
Right.
at this point, I that's why I feel like she's older. She had a lot of wisdom, experience, and she was known. It takes time to build up that kind of a reputation so that people will go, oh, it's Deborah. Wow, we need to listen to her. So there was a lot of, it takes years to get to that place. And so I just think it's interesting because we have, and then I think Yael was probably younger, but just because she needed that strength to hit that mallet through the head.
To be seductive too.
Yes, she was seductive. That's right.
I don't know that an 80-year-old woman could seduce a man.
No, Yael. Not Deborah, Yael.
Yes.
Actually, there was just
Abraham.
Okay, Penina.
I want to tell you a little story. We had a lot of deers coming into our backyard. And one time, one of the female deer gave birth, and they left a little deer by a kind of like under the overhang. And we called the police. We didn't know what to do with them. And they said, leave them alone. She'll be back for them. So for him, but don't touch him. So we didn't touch him. And then one day, it was like 2 days later, all of a sudden, we always look through the window and watch them because they were so beautiful. We had them like in flocks sitting there in the snow and everything. So, and then she stood like 10 meters maybe away from him and just stood there. And we didn't know what to do. So I called again the police and they said, leave him alone. She's going to wait till he comes to her.
Wow.
And so sure enough, she waited and waited, and then he kind of like, fidgeted around, and he was so little. And he stood on his fore and he came to her and started nursing.
Wow.
So it's a way of protecting to make sure that she's not being entrapped or anything, but all this strategy to wait for the baby to come to her, to stand on his feet. He has to be strong enough to go with her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone. She wouldn't have taken him. She would leave them there till he's ready. Wow. So that was something that when I saw that picture, I figured to myself, why do they call a woman Yael? It's like this strategy that she waited for him to come to her, and then she took him and went away with him.
Wow.
Where did he find her?
What?
Where did he find his mother?
She came to the yard.
Oh,
he was laying by the gutter underneath, and she left him there. And then when she came back, she was like 10 feet away from him, and he got up and he kind of like wiggled a little bit, and he walked to her.
Okay, I want to just go to this little part.
Can I say something about I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to make a comment to Penina. When the police said don't touch the baby,
right?
That was so that you don't put any of your hands and your smell onto the baby.
Exactly. Yes.
But I remember we had a similar thing with a bird came up in our backyard, and the little baby fell on the ground. Well, my son wanted to pick her up and, take care of her. And I think we kind of said, I think you have to leave her. And sure enough, the mother did come back. But as long as we didn't contaminate her, she came back for it. She wouldn't have recognized the baby if we had touched her. So I think that's
right.
What happened there.
So we just have a few more minutes. I just want to show you this part of the poem right here. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anat, in the days of Yael, the highways were abandoned. Travelers took to winding paths. Villagers in Israel would not fight. In other words, everybody was completely cowed and defeated by the Canaanite army until they held back until I, Deborah, arose, until I arose, a mother in Israel.
That's right.
So she called into the poem.
herself.
Yeah. God chose new leaders when war came to the city gates, but not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with Israel's princes, with the willing volunteers among the people. Praise the Lord. And then she goes to this whole thing about who would fight and who would not fight. In some places they came. What are you waiting for? Come and fight. It's like in the districts of Reuben, they didn't come. They're searching of heart. But the people of Zebulun risked their very lives, as did Naphtali. So now they're praising the tribes that fought. Kings came, they fought. The kings of Canaan fought. And then all these different things. So now I want to get to this part. Most blessed of women be Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him curdled milk. They add more in the poem. Her hand so he didn't just give him milk, she gave him curds, which is like cottage cheese. Yeah. Her hand reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera. She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he sank. He fell. He lay. At her feet he sank. He fell. Where he sank, there he fell. Such a beautiful ride. Okay, now here's the. So now she's looking at Sisera's mother. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice, she cried out, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why is the clatter of his chariots delayed?" The mothers of Sisera saying, "Why isn't he back?" The wisest of her ladies answer her. So we see that this is royalty. Indeed, she keeps saying to herself, "Are they not finding and dividing the spoils? A woman or two for each man?" So in other words, he's raping and collecting women slaves. That's what they're doing. A colorful garments is plunder for Sisera. Colorful garments, highly embroidered garments for my neck. All this is plunder. He's bringing women, he's bringing plunder. This is what they're telling him. So then Deborah says, "So may all your enemies perish, Lord." In other words, you, rotten hell, Sisera's mother. "But may all who love you be like the sun when it rises in strength." Then the land had peace for 40 years.
Wow.
It's a beautiful poem, very colorful, and in more detail than the story. So I sent this all to you, so you all have it. Deborah is one of our great role models. And, that's why I don't get like any Jewish male chauvinism, because we have so many amazing women in our tradition and in our texts that show us what a Jewish woman could be. So I send you out, sisters with power, for the week.
Okay.
Great. Happy Pesach.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.